Hello and welcome once again to Bible Talk with Bruce and Becky. Again, we're a little bit late on making our current episode. Becky has recently had cataract surgery. Made her blue eyes even bluer. They're like limpid pools. Okay, we'll move on. We appreciate everyone who follows our studies online. And we'd like to have feedback from you. If you want to send us questions or comments, you can email us at Bruce Woolley, that's Wooley, at hotmail.com or Becky Woolley at hotmail.com. We'd be glad to hear from you. We're ready now for chapter 34 of Genesis. Another sordid episode from the lives of the people at that time, involving the only daughter in Jacob's family, as far as we know. But not a nice story, not pleasant. But one thing I appreciate about the scripture is that they tell it like it is. They don't cover up things that happen that shouldn't happen, or weaknesses and issues that the characters have. But it all emphasizes the grace of God. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, this is chapter 34, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife." Several questions raised in this first paragraph of the story of Dinah and what happened to her. The first one I have is, what exactly was she doing out there on her own, roaming around the land?
It wasn't her fault.
Say it was her fault.
Doesn't matter what she was doing.
Well, hang on. Her family should not have let her be roaming around like that because of their mores, social mores. Young unmarried women did not go off on their own without some kind of chaperone. And it's not clear exactly what she's doing. This translation says she went out to see the women of the land. It could be translated to be seen by the women of the land. This was not her native territory, and she's doing some kind of visiting, apparently, among the women. When Shechem, son of Hamor, prince of the land, saw her and was attracted. The next question is, what exactly happened here? The language is not clear. This translation says he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her.
Seems pretty clear to me.
What do you think happened?
I think he raped her.
Well, that's a pretty common interpretation, but the language is not clear that it was a rape.
But they did have sex.
They did, apparently. But notice, as we read on, she stays there with the family of the man who lay with her and humiliated her. Not sure if humiliated is an accurate translation either. But something that shouldn't have happened. He should have told his father before this to get her for his wife. Originally, he's just attracted to her physically, but he falls in love with her instead. What was the usual outcome of a rape in that culture? What happened to the two parties involved?
Well, somebody got stoned, right?
Only if it was a case of adultery.
Okay.
If it was a married woman, stoning could be involved. And adultery is also always spoken of in the Old Testament as having sex with another man's wife. Uh, the law of Moses is not in effect at this time, but it does reflect how the culture would have looked on this. According to the law of Moses, if the woman was raped in a town and she didn't cry out, she was to be stoned. But if she's raped out in the countryside, there's no such penalty. Why is that?
Well, it's assumed that if she was out in the country and hollered, nobody would hear her.
Right. So, in this patriarchal culture, she bears the brunt of making known what has happened. Not only that, what is supposed to happen when the rape comes to the attention of other people?
I don't know.
She is forced to marry the man who raped her. That sounds too. But why would they do that?
Well, otherwise she would never have a husband, probably, because she was humiliated.
Yes, poor woman, according to their standards, had to have a relationship with a man, protect her. Her father when she was living at home, her husband if she gets married, her sons if the husband dies. So she would have been left on her own. She couldn't go down to Walmart and get a cashier job. So, according to their way of looking at things, which most of us, including me, would not agree with, she would be forced to marry this man.
What's the penalty for him?
Penalty for him? He gets her as a wife. There is no penalty for him. Remember, this is a totally different culture, much more like in modern times Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
the way they look at women, and some similarities here. However, in this case,
He gets his comeuppance.
well, but Shechem wants to marry her,
Yeah. But I mean,
and
he gets.
let's not get
We'll see.
ahead of
Okay.
ourselves yet. But I want you to notice where she stays while this is being worked out. She stays in the house of Shechem, the man who lay with her and humiliated her. Well, beginning in verse 5, Becky, will you read through verse 7?
Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field, so Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry, because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done.
Okay. Jacob's a little afraid to take on this outrage by himself. He waits for his sons to come in from the field. They refer to defiling his daughter, which this does suggest that she was forced, at least originally, but she could be defiled simply for having sex outside of marriage. But I'm not trying to excuse what happened here. I'm just saying there are some questions. And this particular paragraph that Becky just read contains an anachronism. Did you notice it?
No.
Can you explain to us what an anachronism is?
It's like when you're watching a nativity scene and somebody's wearing a wristwatch, or you're in the 19th century movie and somebody's driving an automobile down the street 90 miles an hour.
Right. Anachronism comes from two Greek words. What else? Chronos, which refers to time, and ana, which means out of order or wrong. There's something in this account which indicates that the writer is speaking later than the account itself, and that he puts in something from his time that would not have applied in Jacob's time. It says the men were indignant and very angry because he, that is Shechem, had done an outrageous thing in Israel.
Oh.
And who? There's no such place as in Israel at this time, the time of Jacob and his sons. In Israel, we refer to their territory, which they received centuries after this. So Moses, or the writer, which could easily be Moses at this time, uses the term from his own time to apply to the story. His readers and he are in Israel at the time the story is written down, but it shows that the writer is quite a bit later than the actual incidents. I'm sure the story was passed down through the family. Is that clear? It'll be on the test.
Gotcha.
On the final.
Multiple choice.
Yeah. Reminds me of when I was in college. And I had a biology teacher who always gave multiple choice tests. And it became apparent to me and some others who were paying attention that invariably the right answer would be the longest of the choices. So we did quite well without actually having to study. But that's neither here nor there.
That's why I always beat you in Trivial Pursuit under biology.
Always? Let's move along. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it and get property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me I will give. Ask for me as great a bride price and gift as you will, and I will give whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife."
Who were these people?
They were Hivites.
That tells me nothing.
That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
They are a tribe who lived in Canaan before the Israelites moved in, and they are just occupiers of this certain area where they are dwelling at the moment. And they propose intermarriage and commercial agreements to prosper themselves, especially, and the sons of Israel. Notice all the talk of giving and taking. Who is to be given and who is to be taken? Same person.
The wife.
Dinah.
Yeah.
Whose opinion is not asked or heard
Yeah.
in all this negotiating? Same
Dinah.
person, Dinah. Again, it shows you the difference in their culture and the kind of culture that has been passed down in that part of the world in places even today. Negotiation is how much will be paid to get her as bride. Her feelings are not reflected. It doesn't even say that her brothers talked to her about what had happened. The outrage is against their reputation and their family.
The Shechem's family is paying for the bride.
Right.
And in most cultures, you send money with the bride to the groom.
Both would be the case back in this culture. There's a dowry that the bride brings in, as well as a bride price. gifts that are paid to the bride's family,
Camels and goats.
right? I heard some jokes over in Africa when I was there about how many goats this woman was bringing if she was a bride. This was from the local people that were joking about it. But the dowry, let me see if my memory will help me here. The dowry that the bride bought was to be kept in trust in case her husband died or there was a divorce. She would receive it back. But that wasn't always honored in the actual practice. Okay, so the negotiations have begun. Both parties are trying to work things out to their own favor, especially Hamor and Shechem are expecting they're going to prosper financially from this new arrangement with Israel. Well, verse 13, the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully because he had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. If you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and we will be gone. Okay, the plot done thickened here, and we're told that this is a deceitful response. We know that the boys are up to something, and it's not too hard to figure out what's going to happen, because they want all the second people, the males, most of whom would be adults, to be circumcised. Read on, Becky, beginning in 18.
Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem. And the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most honored of all his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, these men are at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us to become one people, when every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and all their beasts be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will dwell with us. All who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city.
All right, it seems to be a good economic proposal to the Hivite people. They're living there under the leadership of Hamor and his son Shechem. And in those days, marriage was mostly an economic arrangement uh, designed to hopefully prosper both families involved. This is an unusual situation in that Shechem and Dinah know each other in more than one sense before the wedding. More common situation would be they wouldn't meet maybe a few times with members of the family with them, but wouldn't get to know each other till after the wedding. Love and marriage did not go together like a horse and carriage in their time. Love was not actually considered to be a precondition for marriage. And if they were fortunate, they would love each other after they were married. Well, the men get themselves circumcised. A quite painful process for an adult male. But beginning in verse 25, on the third day when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure, and they killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with a sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all the little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses they captured and plundered. Simeon and Levi are mentioned because they are uh, blood brothers of Dinah. They're all the sons and daughters of Leah. Simeon and Levi, of course, will be very important among the 12 tribes later on, but they don't have those roles here. The Levites, for example, are not priests at this point. There's no place for them to be priests, and it's only under Moses that they become. But they are prominent sons of Jacob. I don't think we're meant to believe that just these two guys went in and killed all the males in the city. They would have had servants and others with them. Then the rest of the sons of Jacob came in and plundered what was left in the city, taking everything of value, including the wives and children of the men who had been killed. They would be considered slaves, probably, in the family.
There isn't any indication of what God thought about all this.
God is not mentioned in this whole incident. I'm glad you brought that up. That's part of the problem with the behavior of the people in this chapter. And it's just a simple rule of thumb. If you leave God out of the picture, bad things happen. They do all this on their own. There's no prayer involved. They don't seek a signal from God on what to do. Becky is perceptive there, and that's part of the lesson we're meant to gain from this story. Well, Becky, read the last paragraph of the chapter, beginning of verse 30, please.
Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?"
Okay, so the story comes to a conclusion with that statement from the brothers. Jacob is fearful that the inhabitants of the land won't like what has happened here and will overwhelm him and his sons. Which brings me to a question about this chapter as we wrap it up that I raised last week in anticipation. What's the purpose of putting this story in here? We've been following Jacob and his sons and Jacob moving back to the promised land. Why tell this story of Dinah in the middle of that? You got any educated guesses?
Well, it's historical.
Yes, but I'm sure a lot of other things happen that
Yeah.
are not in here.
It might explain some of the animosity between the Israelites and the rest of the people in the area.
Okay, good point. Another point that we might overlook, unless we're following closely along here, it looks like at many different places in this account in Genesis that God's promises are not going to be fulfilled. He tells Abraham and Jacob, Isaac and Jacob after him, that he will give them the land of promise and that he will make their descendants so numerous they can't be counted. But they keep running into risks where it looks like it's possible that Jacob and all of his sons would get wiped out here by the people around them. How could God's promise be fulfilled if that took place? Well, in every case, we are reminded that God overcomes these obstacles. He does preserve these people.
In spite of themselves.
In spite of themselves, not because of their righteousness or their faithfulness, because of Abraham and his faith. and because of God. As I've mentioned several times, ad infinitum, God is the hero of this story, and he is able to keep the promises that he makes and to protect the people involved from harm. Also, maybe it was put there to show the peril that the women like Dinah face and the position she's in as opposed to that of her brothers and her father. She has no power. She has nothing to help her except men. And men can mistreat her or they can take revenge. Okay, I'm through with this chapter. Anything you want to mention from it?
I'm glad we're through with this chapter.
Me too. It's not a pleasant story, is it?
No.
And we don't know what happened to Dinah after this. She's not mentioned again. Well, next time we'll see that Jacob gets a new name, that Isaac and his wife Rachel die, and we move ever closer to, believe it or not, the story of Joseph is coming up. And we'll take up the last part of this book of Genesis. Well, until next time, I'm going to remind you, along with Becky,
Don't
don't
send
send
money.
money. May God bless you and have a wonderful time.